morning. I'm County Legislator MaryJane Shimsky. Thank you to the Martin Luther King Breakfast 2022 Committee and the Village of Hastings-in-Hudson for hosting this morning's event. Events this January have been particularly difficult because a normal winter of live events has again been deferred. But as always, the King Breakfast Committee soldiers on, and I am grateful for their efforts and to all of you for attending to virtually honor Dr. King, his life and his legacy. Civic engagement has great potential for changing our world and for improving ourselves. It gives us the kind of connection to the larger community and world that we need to function as productive, ethical, and moral members of society. Lately, we've seen too much harm that the false variety of civic engagement, a mere acting out motivated by selfishness or white supremacy, or a desire to overthrow our democratic institutions can do. It is more important than ever that those of us who are motivated by the same goals and dreams of Dr. King redouble our efforts to constructively engage our community. Voting is a particularly potent form of civic engagement. Anyone who cannot vote can still influence our communities. Some of our local middle school and high school students too young to vote have hosted powerful events in recent years. And then there are those that have captured the world's imagination like Greta von Thunberg. But voting changes the nature of our powers. Voters are not mere supplicants, but they have a measure of power to elect people who share their goals and values and remove from power those who do not. And when voters unite with other voters, they can leverage their individual power into something that is world-changing. We all know the horror stories about voter suppression laws in other states, motivated primarily and often unapologetically to deny the vote to African Americans, to members of the Latinx community, to Asian Americans, to anyone identified as quote unquote different. But we still have work to do here in New York. New York has long been known as a state that makes it difficult for people to vote, and our voting rates tend to reflect that. Last November, there were 2 propositions on the ballot in New York to make it easier to vote. Unfortunately, both failed. One proposition would have permitted same-day voter registration. The other would have permitted no excuse absentee ballots. There are innovations used by states with higher voting rates than ours. More than 30 states provide for universal or no excuse mail-in voting. Democratic and Republican states, liberal and conservative states alike. Such a rule would make voting easier for our essential workers, single parents, and others of modest means with hectic lives. 20 states allow same-day voter registration, which tends to help renters as they change addresses more frequently than homeowners. I should think that if these laws had destroyed our system of government in any of the states that implemented them, we would have heard by now. But what these laws actually do is make it easier for the residents to vote. And it appears that more of the residents vote as a result. We like to think of New York as liberal and forward-thinking, and that is to a large extent true. But these ballot propositions were subject to a very well-funded campaign that demonized them. I used to hear their alarmist ads on the radio every morning. And there were the yard signs along our highways. There was no equivalent campaign speaking up for the propositions. Today's essay contest asked what our school children's wishes are for 2022. I have 3. 1, that everyone participates in one extra outdoor act of civic engagement this year. Outdoors, because outdoor events are largely COVID-proof. Go to one more rally, participate in one more neighborhood cleanup, help remove the invasive vines that are killing our trees, join a group to plant more trees. 2, if we are finally free of COVID, that many of us find time to volunteer in places where COVID made volunteering difficult or impossible, such as schools, hospitals, and nursing homes. And 3, that we try again to enact same-day registration and no excuse absentee ballots in New York, bolstered this time by a better campaign to support these measures. And that all of us tell our friends and neighbors why these propositions are so important. Now let's go into our communities and stand up for Dr. King's legacy. There is no time to waste.